Welcome to Chapter 1 of Zero to Journey, a video documentary series of our journey with an Airstream Caravel 16RB. What I'd like to do to begin is just tell you about at least 5 things that I've identified that I'd like to accomplish with this series that I hope is going to be ongoing. And just an aside, from time to time, if I look down and over here, I have my laptop here with sort of a script outline, so that's what's going on. So what I'd like to accomplish. Number 1, I'd like this to be an adventure story about how to go from nothing but an idea to an adventure in our brand new Caravel 16RB. So we don't own it yet. We have never owned a trailer. We have never traveled in a trailer. We've done a lot of traveling, but never trailer camping. And so hopefully this will document for someone else who might be new and never having done this before, what that feels like. 2, I'd like it to portray the steps that it takes to sort of document what it takes to go from owning nothing, no trailer, to the adventures as a way of helping you know what to expect if you take this sort of journey yourself. We're only a few months into the process, and it is a lot more overwhelming than we thought it would be. So this might help people watching how the story unfolds. Number 3, we'd like to document a portion of our lives as we live out our later 60s. Actually, I'm late 60s. My wife is mid 60s. And maybe to watch myself lose some weight. I look much better when I'm about 20 pounds lighter, and I've been having a hard time doing that, but who knows, maybe I'll go, yes, this was the vehicle that helped me do it, because I want to look better as the series goes on here. But most importantly, I want to create interest specifically in the Airstream Caravel 16RB and its cousin, the Bambi 16RB. As you probably know, Airstream makes most trailers that are much larger. They start, except for the Caravel and the Bambi 16, they all start at 20 and go up to 33 or so, something like that. And living in purchasing and dealing with those larger trailers is much different than the 16RB. So I'd like to sort of put more information out there about what it feels like, what they cost, what the process was like. So sort of the second half of chapter 1 here, I'd like to talk about the history of my wife and I with regard to travel trailers. First of all, on her side of the family, she grew up in Southern California in the 60s with her parents owning a pickup truck and a cab-over camper. And the parents and all the kids used to climb into that and go out to Joshua Tree in the wintertime and do camping and that sort of thing. And she has such fond memories of what that was like that she's been wanting for years and years to recreate that. And we weren't able to do that sort of in our younger years with our children. But now that they're all grown and gone, we're looking to help make that dream come alive a little bit for her here at this point in our lives. On my side of the fence, I've never camped in a trailer. I did a lot of camping in tents in some very nice places. Never backpack camping, which is kind of true camping, but more car camping with nice tents and Coleman stoves and things like that. But now that we're at the point where the kids are gone and life is slowing down just a little bit, what we've been doing for really the last 3-4 years, we weren't ready to buy something, but we would stop by trailer lots and with no idea what the brands were, what the models were, the styles, we would just start wandering through, and we'd go looking at anything from pop-ups, the soft-sided pop-ups, thinking, hey, we could buy that now. Those are really inexpensive, and we could start doing some kind of camping with that. To the more recently discovered hard-sided pop-ups, where they still fold down like a pop-up, but the triangle sides come up, and you have sort of what it was like to have a pop-up, but with a little more security, if you will, than just a tent on top of the trailer. To, the really nice 20, 22, 25 foot trailers that have slide outs and, you know, comfortable dinettes and reclining chairs and refrigerators and queen or king size beds, all of that stuff. And we would just look at it and go, wow, some of this is really cool. And one of the things that I'll talk about in a later chapter is sort of the allure of the very large trailer with all those home conveniences, and how for us in particular it was both attracting and yet sort of not what we were looking for. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of how that works when you're looking for things. So that kind of sums up what we're trying to do with this video series. But before I end this first chapter, I thought I would give you a list of the kinds of topics that I've already come up with. Just in we've been seriously looking here over the last 3 months that I've already come up with that I think will be good topics for future videos. That includes being attracted to small trailers and where that comes from and what that's about. The allure of large trailers, and then the allure of even larger trailers. Then the allure of Airstream in particular compared to all the other brands that are out there. The sacrifices that we're ready to make in owning a small trailer, what those sorts of things will be. And all of those topics kind of get wrapped up in a question I have, which is, what is camping? Because for some people, you're not camping unless you hike 3,000 feet straight up with a tent on your back and sleep out in the wild. And for some people, without a big screen TV and surround sound in your living room with a giant pop-out, that's what it takes for you to feel like you're really camping. So we'll talk a little about that. Another topic, shopping for a used Airstream and how that went. Another topic, the size dilemma for an SUV owner. Currently we own a GMC Yukon, which is a pretty capable vehicle until you start looking at trailers, and especially larger trailers, and then you realize, okay, there's limits on SUVs, even the biggest ones, and sometimes you may have to, depending on what you choose, move up to a pickup truck. What I would call the draw of the Bambi was the first one that drew us into Airstream, because since Airstreams are quite expensive, we realized pretty quick we wouldn't be able to, even though we didn't really want a large one, we wouldn't be able to afford the larger ones or the higher end models, you know, the Classic and the Flying Cloud and all of those. Once we got, our first thought was that we were going to get a Bambi. And then the big question became 16, 20, or 22. And we did a lot of debating about that. So we'll have a chapter talking about that. And then I'll just call it the first time we saw a Caravel in person and the connection to Cocoa Beach, Florida. And I'll talk about that when that chapter comes up. I have a chapter called It's the Windows, which is fun to talk about. I have another chapter called Deciding to Settle for an Airstream 16RB because, you know, it's quite a bit more expensive than most trailers, and yet it's still sort of settling when you pick the small one, the 16. Storage space and the things we're discovering there. Searching for deals. It is kind of easy to look for deals, and yet there are a lot of challenges when you're out there looking for deals as well. Let's see. I have a chapter called Other Stuff. Boy, have we learned a lot about things like sway bar, weight distribution hitches, brake controllers, brakes and shocks and prepping for hauling a trailer, tires and the different grades of tires, arriving at a final price, putting down a deposit, insurance, financing, shipping, and where we're at right now, waiting for it to arrive. So to wrap up this first chapter, just this week, we put a deposit down on a Caravel 16RB, and that's where our journey begins.